my heritage and my understanding is that we are all Africans. Humanity is African. So I'm speaking to humanity. And our problems, there are particularities here and there, but in essence, the problems are really of the human species.
And we'll discuss, of course, some of those particular human problems later in the program. What about you, Mr. Munanga?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be hosted by Shaka. My first time, of course, but I'm exceedingly grateful for the invitation. I'm looking forward for the discussion tonight.
I'm talking about the people of Liberia celebrating really for a very credible election that ushers in a very, very legitimate President George Weah. And of course, hoping to receive the baton from incumbent President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf after she successfully completes her 2 terms.
That's right.
You come from Uganda. You have some individual in Uganda who basically says that, you know what, he still needs some time to accomplish his agenda.
Yeah.
How do you react to that?
The reaction can be analyzed from very many different ways, Shaka. First of all, we can look at the individual. We can look at the system that he's creating. And of course, we can look at the plight of our people. Because what has happened, and if I could start from a general point, of course, I congratulate our colleagues from Liberia. But what we've seen in Africa so far is a democracy that is minimalist at the very least. And it does not come with the twin of good governance, meaning the state capacity to create predictable, accountable, transparent frameworks for the conduct of public business. One. Number two, I believe that the wave, which is sometimes scholars, thinkers like my colleague here refer to as the third wave, which swept part of Africa, into the 90s, we are looking at leaders that adopted democracy to seduce international donors rather than on the basis of their belief in the intrinsic value of democracy, the rule of law, freedom, and liberty. Third, most of Africa, for all the joy sometimes that there is some good news in what we shared, especially in the opening of the program, probably 61% of the population in Africa is said to be living in either a free or a partly free democratic, country, one way or the other.
You think that it is up to that huge percentage, really?
Actually not, because that's why I qualified it. It is said to be free to partly free, But what has happened if we look at that democracy? And I think, Africa needs to look at the concept of democracy, because what I see, especially in Uganda now, when you narrow it down to Uganda, is majoritarian, whereby democracy is being used to overthrow democracy. You have mob rule, as the Greeks one time
You
back
mean
there.
using the law to undermine democracy?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Rule by law.
Absolutely.
Not rule of law.
Exactly.